Our work session to order. Dr. Baraco.
So this evening, we do have numerous board policies to go over. A lot of them are simple changes, some of them that are just changes in the actual Indiana code. So in many cases, the board does not have latitude to say, oh, we don't want to accept that change. But they often refer to these as technical corrections because you don't really have a lot of choice. Nonetheless, I've historically brought these to you anyway, just so you can see what that change is. Not that you'll remember it, and honestly, there's an argument to be made that if it's in code, you may not need a policy for it anyway, because we're all expected to follow all the laws of the state of Indiana, because that's how we're funded. So, having said that, let's begin with policy 0166.1, and this has to do with our consent agenda, which is part of our public meetings. Evidently, some districts had tucked personnel into their consent agenda. Resolutions that require annual adoptions, I guess, such as the tag policy, which, you know, the rule has changed for this year, so we don't have to adopt a teacher appreciation grant policy. Those winners are going to be selected by some committee at the state, but those kinds of things that some people put in there, and resignations and leaves. So they're striking that, but what remains are minutes from the prior meetings and bills for payment, which is, generally speaking, what we use our consent agenda for.
And that's for the consent agenda only.
That is for the consent agenda.
Everything else comes on the other part of the agenda.
Right. Mrs. Castaneda gives you a detailed list for personnel, for instance, and on occasion, we've had the board separate one out so they don't want to vote on it collectively, but that's been rare. But no, we've always done that separately. We've always done our resignations and leaves as part of that personnel packet. The advantage of that, of course, is it gives the board a chance to ask questions about it in advance of the meeting if they have a question why something's going on. So that's our consent agenda.
And you know, Larry, that's a very important concept that you just stated, because I did not understand the consent agenda when I first came on the board. And I remember asking questions about payments on the claims because I had seen former board members do that. And boy, I found out real quick I was wrong to ask because it was on the consent agenda, and I should have taken care of that before the meeting.
Well, that's debatable. I don't think it's inappropriate that you ask a question. But because you even if you review the packet in advance, you may not have thought about it at that time. And then if you reviewed it last minute before the meeting, you might have said, hey, what exactly is this? But I do think it is much better for us if it's asked in advance, because sometimes we need to dig in the file to see what,
Okay.
you know, for instance, when we use the credit card, which is a rare thing, but we do make purchases. For instance, our monthly fee for iPad use from home, so we have the internet to check email. There's no other way to pay that to AT&T other than the credit card. They won't accept our normal modes of payment. And then once in a while, there's an item that is just so much cheaper for Rick to buy. He uses the credit card. And so it's okay to ask those questions.
Okay.
Because you may not know what the item is, but if you wait till the board meeting, we're probably going to have to say, we'll have to table it and I'll get back to you, because we might not have the details here at the meeting.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation.
All right. And I did switch to landscape on some of these, and I'll try to do that moving forward. I just find it easier to read for me, and hopefully it's better for you as well. So the next one is the executive session. Board Policy 167.2. Remember, in this session, they gave us some extra latitude. For instance, we've always been able to talk about purchasing or selling property, but they've also given us some latitude now in terms of the actual contract. Even if we're making an approval to move forward with something, we get to talk about it in executive session as much as we want so that we get the best deal we can get. I tend to believe that it was always acceptable, but they went the extra mile to do that. They also added D, to receive information about and interview prospective employees. So it doesn't have to just be the superintendent, it can be other people as well. And then the last item of change would be, in keeping with the confidential nature of executive sessions, no board member shall disclose the content of discussions that take place during executive sessions. That's the last statement on page 2 of the policy, and I did select that. I think it's a healthy reminder to everybody that we get the permission from the state of Indiana to talk about certain things in executive session, and those items really are not for public consumption, so they shouldn't be made public. Okay, on to 1216. They updated this policy from 3 years ago. They used to use terms like grooming and appearance, and they've simplified this policy. So instead of being dress and grooming, I guess they don't want to question the length of hair for some people, but they call it now dress and appearance. I did select all of those things. And I think the only one that caught my eye would have been E, appear in such a way that does not disrupt the educational process. So an outlandish outfit could be problematic. So we have that covered in E, or cause a health or safety concern. So if somebody if the automotive teacher started wearing long scarves, we might tell him not to, so he doesn't get caught in a piece of his equipment. But that's dressing, and you're going to see this one again, because remember that they'll have some of these policies that are general, and then they'll repeat it sort of for certified and classified. 1220, employment of the superintendent. Again, you don't have too many choices here. You get to pick. Select this option if the board is an elected board, which ours is. They go into some limitations of the terms of a superintendent contract and or buyout. At the bottom of page 1, it talks about how the board, in the course of their duty of replacing a superintendent, can do this by using a committee of board members, which we've always done. The services of professional consultants, which we haven't always done, but we have done it on occasion. I didn't choose the counsel of the outgoing superintendent. I was speculating this board would not want that. It doesn't seem to me that you would need the counsel of the superintendent. You may need some support from the superintendent's office with organizing the process, and I certainly think that's appropriate, but I don't think that's what this intent is. I think this intent is that the superintendent in some way weighs in or maybe narrows the field or something, and I don't think that's appropriate, nor do I think the participation of members of the community is appropriate. I think the board has an important job, and it's one of their main tasks, but I think they need to do it, and they need to own it.
And Larry, wouldn't the counsel of the superintendent be also inclusive under B, the services of professional consultants?
No, the sitting superintendent wouldn't be considered a professional consultant. A professional consultant would be like school board association or the university team or
See, and I would-
Hazard, Atia, and Young, like we used once before I was hired. I think that would be the consultant piece. I think the other items I selected were the preparation of the written job description, preparation of written specifications of qualifications. I think that would all be in a job posting. Where feasible, the opportunity to visit the schools. Well, certainly, it wouldn't hurt for someone to see what they're getting into to take a tour of the schools. Although there's so much information online now that I'm not sure physically visiting is necessary. You can about take a virtual tour by looking at our pictures. And then, the other stuff is, I think, pretty self-explanatory, standard pieces that you would select. The next section that matters, talking about the contract, that, the standard teaching contract that everyone gets has the term of employment, meaning what's the beginning and end date, the annual salary, benefits, and then other matters could be on like a page 2 of a contract, like an automobile allowance and/or technology allowance, which has become pretty standard now for superintendents. Down to the anti-nepotism, I did select B, the corporation shall not employ as the superintendent the relative of a board member. I speculated that the board would not think that's in the best interest of the corporation. I suspect that you could do it, otherwise it wouldn't be an option, but I don't think it would be good for our community. And then if we go down to option F, if corporation employees in a supervisor-subordinate relationship choose to date or have sexual relations, the employees must notify the corporation administration and accept the corporation's decision to transfer one or both of the employees so that they no longer have a supervisor-subordinate relationship. I think that's, it's one thing to have couples work in the corporation. It happens all the time, but they should not be directly reporting to one another. And so I think there needs to be a separation of a layer in there so that evaluations and such are being done by someone who's not your spouse. And then other options to be considered, the superintendent shall devote themselves to the duties. Any candidate's intentional misstatement, I think that's in law too. If people lie on a resume, that's grounds for termination. And that would be the hiring of a superintendent policy. Any questions about that? Okay, moving on to 2131, educational outcomes for students.
Wait, Larry, I'm sorry, I do have a question. So there was a time, it was many, many, many years ago, when there were situations happening in school corporations and people were asked to leave and they were given good evaluations by these corporation asking them to leave. Does that cover that in here? It does not, does it? But we talked about it at one point in time, the false narratives that are out there, that people are good.
Well, we do have a policy on referrals, and we have a policy about evaluation, but that's not what this is about. How you replace a superintendent after retirement or
Right. I mean,
resignation.
And it could be that we get somebody who has faults. You know what I mean? Do you remember what that happening years ago?
Well, I think it's the board's job to do their own due diligence and not trust one document from a prior school corporation, which would include not only straightforward background checks, which would include obviously criminal background check, also checking referrals that a candidate gives you, but furthermore, checking with people who weren't listed as a reference. And I think that's
I just know it.
good personnel work to make sure that you're not getting somebody with skeletons, so to speak, serious matters. I think that when people leave at the end of the year, or if they leave during the year, you can make statements of fact to the person who does a referral. You say the person left at the end of the year, and we would not hire them back.
Well, I know in this one particular situation, board members, I don't know names of the board members, but they drove across the state of Indiana to talk to the people in the community about this potential superintendent. So, there's got to be a safeguard. I don't know what it is, but I bring it up just for awareness, I guess, more than anything, that it can happen, and it has happened, so.
I think the importance is to fall back on good personnel work, and there are people who can advise you, and there's plenty of other sources that can say, here's how you can properly vet a candidate so you don't make a mistake.
All right,
That
thank
kind
you.
of stuff exists out there, but it's not in this policy.
Okay.
So our next policy, looks like we haven't renewed this or updated this since 2011. They want to talk about educational outcomes for students, and nearly everything is similar to what it was before, but changing some language. In some cases, they look like technical corrections to me, but they've cleaned up the policy, and we still check every box because we want students to be well-rounded, not just with communication and collaboration or general education, pride and ethics, interaction and cooperation, citizenship, arts and culture, social change. And the pathways, I think, make sure that our students get exposed to several of these categories, and so they're ready to, do well in society when they get done with us.
And then the AI policy that I think that you said they were working on, or maybe Mrs. Schoeneman said that would fall under administrative regs.
The AI policy, I can't remember if it's in here or if it's going to be in the next section at our next work session, but the bigger key on that will be the administrative regulation that looks at certain things. Of course, the hottest topic will be language arts and writing assignments that aren't done in class, because at the college level at least, that's where they're having most of their problems with people putting in what they want something to be written about. But I've got to tell you, when I Google stuff and I get the AI gist of it, it doesn't sound like normal writing. It has a different feel to it. Maybe Sarah can speak to what the English department is hoping to accomplish.
So actually, Mrs. Novak is going to be here this evening, and she's going to share what guidelines they've come up with.
Perfect.
So that'll be on the agenda for the
Thank you for
regular
that.
meeting.
Okay. So I included the old policy of educational outcomes for students. I put old in yellow because the new one is more detailed, but it replaces this old policy. (2210) curricular development. Let me you see, I didn't mark anything in highlights, so I'm not thinking there's anything drastic in here. It looks like we checked every single thing about, variety of learning methodologies and so forth. I think we already periodically make progress reports to the board through various curriculum director presentations. It gets tricky when they start talking about innovative programs, pilot programs, if you will. Such programs shall be limited to a single class or grade within a school building and to a specific period of time. I checked it, even though generally it wouldn't be a single class, but at the high school it could be. And it could be, something we do for a particular grade level. But I checked it because I think it's clearer than striking it and then leaving it completely open as to what you're doing. When you do a pilot program, you're testing out an idea on some subgroup, and not everyone. So that's why I checked that.
Where is the pilot program? Whereabouts is that? Okay, thank you. That's very, okay.
And as always, when we add to the curriculum offerings, the board hears about it before it gets instituted. Okay. This one has to do with reproductive health, which has been somewhat of a hot topic, right? Because some people want to opt out of anything that has to do with anything about reproduction or the birds and the bees. We pretty much follow the state guidance on this. And so if people want to opt out, it's because they just don't want any exposure at all. I think even when we've had, what's that? When we've had some people sit in, I think they don't think it's what they may have thought it was going to be in terms of shock value. So Mrs. Castaneda was involved with some of that too, so do you have any comment you would want to make about?
No, I mean, in the past, we had always sent home a letter to families, letting them know what was going to be taught and when, and it gave them the ability to come in and review all the content and opt out. So I feel like this is in line with what our past practice has been.
Okay. So really, we didn't have many choices on that. The mandatory curriculum stuff sort of speaks for itself.
So, Dr. Brecka, where do we hit on item G? Is it mostly in the health, under mandatory, is it mostly under health classes?
Yes, it is under health.
And it's required of everyone, but is it touched on periodically or? And the reason I ask is, remember back in the day when we had a lot of professional training for our parents about that concept, and I know that Mr. Kissinger did one last year, I believe. I just didn't know if that information reached the students.
Well, I think through middle school, they hear it more frequently. At high school, they probably hear it in the health curriculum, and for most of us, we believe by high school, kids are aware of the dangers at that point.
And the reason I ask is because when I was a grant reader on the SAFE committee, a lot of schools in our area use GREAT at the middle school. And we don't use anything at the middle school anymore, right? We don't have an adopted program?
No, we moved away from the DARE program because of the sheer quantity of time they were requiring in order to officially give the program. Our SROs still do talk to our students in addition to our PE teachers who will cover some of that in the health content that they teach, but it's not that scripted program like we had in the past through DARE.
And that's true with the GREAT program then, is that part of DARE?
I'm not familiar with GREAT.
GREAT is at the middle school levels, and DARE was at the elementary levels. And then we had Officer Friendly also for the little ones. Do we do that?
No, because we have our SROs. We want them to build that relationship with that SRO who serves the elementary and the middle school, so they see that same individual K through 8.
Okay, and I know that's happening, so thank you.
Okay, field trips is another one that we are updating. Our board has always approved our field trips, and generally speaking, you hear some of them at about every board meeting when the school year is in session. Out-of-school field trips that do not involve an overnight stay still get approved when we're going into Chicago, which is mainly what that is. You would approve that. Extracurricular and co-curricular, we tend to have those in advance. The one tricky one, of course, is when a team qualifies for the state tournament. Sometimes we're in arrear because we wouldn't have a board member in order to approve it in advance, but it's not really that critical to us because it's sort of been a given throughout our history that when our team advances, that we're going to employ the same safety precautions we do for every other in-season trip. And the board, I don't think, would ever want to say, you're not going to try to win the next round of the tournament. On this policy, I looked at this before I started leaving stuff in, and so on page 2, there was a whole section and a half on international field trips, and that's where I wrote that and highlighted it. I cut the whole section out. I don't see us wanting to be in the business of approving international field trips, given safety concerns and costs. So, there are still people taking trips through EF tours, and that's okay. I think parents understand that while it may be a teacher from one of our schools, that the school is not sponsoring that trip. I checked the box, though a list of field trips may be approved annually. Generally speaking, they get approved as we work our way through the school year, but sometimes some things get approved early, like Safety Village. I did check the box that students can be charged reasonable fees for trips, but no student shall be denied participation for financial inability to pay. That's been our process over time. Students on the trips remain under the supervision of the board or the school and are subject to all school policies. That's not new. All trips must be well-planned, properly timed, and related to regular learning activities. That's nothing new. So the teacher who signs the form that then goes to the principal, that then comes to central office, that teacher, whoever signs that form, is the trip leader. That's not anything new either. And then there's a whole section on overnight field trips where we have people in hotel rooms and so forth. Knock on wood, I think we have a pretty good system. It's generally the band and sports teams, and they've had processes in place for years that I think have met the intent of this policy. We do ask that people have an itinerary. That way, parents who want to know where exactly, if they go to attend, they want to know when their child's showing back up at the gym, if it's dance, or at the field, if it's marching band or whatever, they can kind of know what the schedule is. And then, it's the transportation costs, in some cases, we cover, of course, and in some cases, the organization has to cover them. So I don't think we've had a problem with field trips lately. Although, as money continues to get tight, there could be a problem if some of them are unable to continue. Educational options, and this mainly, I think, has to do with high school kids. So participation in educational options shall be in accordance with the instructional and performance plan, which will be developed based on individual students' needs. The instructional plan will include blah, blah, blah.
Where are you? I lost you.
I'm on policy 2370.
Okay, back on option one about, I don't know, what, 5 of 5? Transportation costs, including co-curricular, athletic, and extracurricular. So if the students drive to Hammond, that's covered under a different venue, different policy?
That's not a field trip. That's a course.
Right, so it's covered some, I mean, we do reimburse them for mileage, don't we, or do we?
No, they ride a bus.
Oh, I thought some were driving.
If they drive, that's by their choice.
Correct, we don't give them mileage.
No, it'd be similar to kids who choose not to ride the bus to the high school. They drive themselves. They could ride the bus. The bus goes through every neighborhood.
That is during the school day, right?
And so is Career Center.
Okay, and then we've got students that are leaving for religious education. Are they coming to us?
That's a separate transportation that they've set up. They
Yeah.
pick up our children and bring them back before dismissal.
Organization.
Interesting. Okay. Now, where are you now?
Now I'm on page 2 of 2370, where they have a section about recognizing training and experience that a student can do pre-enlistment to earn credits. We have plenty of ways to earn credits, and so I suggested we reject that option about giving 2 health credits and 2 PE credits. I mean, we only need 1 PE credit now anymore anyhow. And while their health and wellness may be good, when you've combined health and wellness, you don't know how much of it's wellness and how much of it is health. And as you mentioned earlier, Dr. Malco, the health course at the high school is the only time that they're going to get tested and quizzed on the dangers of amphetamines and barbiturates and everything else.
So Dr. Veracco, for the students that go in the summer and have, training with the National Guard, would they not receive any credit for PE? Would they not receive those 2 credits when they go in the summer before graduate, or, before their senior year?
I don't know that we have anybody going before their senior year.
I'm sorry?
I don't know that we've had anybody go before their senior year. That would be news to me.
Yeah, his grandpa's my neighbor. Yeah,
I suppose if that student hadn't taken the 1 credit of PE as a freshman or a sophomore, we could grant a credit for that. It would be,
I think most of our students take that credit so early on that
it's out of the
it's
way
already out of
already.
the way, especially
Yeah.
now that, like Dr. Rocco said, it's just 1
Okay,
credit.
it's just hard to read this and know that, never mind, okay.
and so here, they talk about allowing, the corporation allowing an eligible student to complete an instructional day that consists of 3 hours of instructional time if they, if it met their needs. I think we have customized schedules in the past to students with individualized medical situations. We've had some with extreme anxiety situations. And
Excuse me, are you on Flex program?
I'm on Flex program. I'm on educational options, and it kind of dovetails into Flex program. But my inclination on the second one, the 237002, is to reject that policy because I think we can meet the needs of it in the first one. If I select the last option, may allow an eligible student in grade 11 or 12 to have a modified instructional day, because I think we already do it. Generally speaking, it's through an IEP or a 504. But like in the Flex program 237002, D says to qualify for a Flex program, it would be somebody who's significantly behind in credits for graduation. Our inclination would be not to want to do that for somebody who's significantly behind, because the older you get, the harder it is to finish. And I don't know how D and the second B go hand in hand, significantly behind in credits, but pursue a timely graduation. If you're behind, then I don't think you should qualify for that program.
Unless there's a reason, like you said, a substantial reason.
Generally speaking, when someone gets that far behind and they say, I'm not going to be able to make it, we push them into an alternative diploma program, and or they get the idea themselves for a GED.
Now, is that through our local credit recovery program, or do we still send students to Highland?
We do still have students over at Highland.
I'm sorry?
We do still have students over at Pathfinder in Highland at the high school level.
But that's not for students with a graduation need, or is it more from?
It could be for
Behavior.
students who are behind on credits. But I think this is talking about more something we would do locally here in the case of significant medical needs, mental health, and things like that.
Okay.
So we do have options. You bring up the Pathfinder, and for the core subjects, kids can possibly get caught up. For students who do well until the last month of a course, we can put them in the credit recovery, help them earn their credit that way. There's a lot of motivation for the high school counseling staff and administration to help kids get the credits they need to meet the pathways to get a diploma. And so before, falling back on the GED or a different alternative pathway, we do everything we can to keep them on track to get a Lake Central diploma. So my inclination would be to check the last box that I didn't yet on 2370 and then not take 237002. And I'll bring that back at our next meeting so you can see that, and I'll highlight it so you know that's what I've chosen and before we vote. Guidance and counseling, pretty easy policy. Everything they say that the guidance counselors and the guidance program should do. Every option I think I selected because I think all that stuff is good. It's easy to justify, helping integrate students' experiences, helping them learn to make their own decisions and be problem solvers, assisting them with mental health and addiction concerns, on and on. And so, we've made an effort over the past few years since the community supported us in the referendum to reduce our ratio of students to counselor so our counselors can give more one-on-one attention, not just with academics, but also with mental health and other things that are of need to our students.
I know, and this is going to sound like a stupid question, but it's a very realistic question. As I read through the steps on this, it's really very nice, very specific. Is this shared with our guidance counselors? Do you know? Do they understand the importance of all this? Is it shared with them?
The policy?
Yeah.
No, but I do feel like we meet pretty regularly with the high school and middle school team. I didn't want to speak for Mrs. Schooneman, but that, we did discuss all the different counseling aspects that we needed to cover and provide services for. We also have that partnership with Pillars of Wellness, that if students need additional counseling beyond what we can provide, then we partner with them to come into the schools and provide counseling for our students.
And where are they from?
They actually are based in Illinois, but they have offices here in Schererville and Maryville.
In Lansing, maybe?
I'm not sure about their
Okay.
Illinois location.
Okay, I just know that there's just some issues that have occurred with kids not getting the vocational guidance they needed, so that's why I brought it up.
We can definitely revisit with them once this is approved.
Yeah, just because I represent those people, so thank you, I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
Janice, this one will get your attention, the 24-21 Career and Technical Education Program. It is designed to combine education with work experience and learn marketable skills, learn a little bit about the world of work. I checked every box in the bottom, beginning in the bottom of page 1. We don't have an ag education at our career center. Some rural schools have it right in their own school. They have their own program. KB did when I was there, at least. I'm sure that Lowell still does. But they would have a higher demand. And the Career and Tech Education Program may include a shared time program outside of school. In the past, and I don't know that we have anybody in the carpentry program at the Career Center right now, but in the past, they would build houses and do renovations, and sometimes their day would, they would work longer there and get paid after their class time ended, and they would continue to work on the job and or go to work for somebody else who is doing similar carpentry work. So we want to leave that option available to people too. And then, any questions about that policy?
I just wanted to know, do we still do the diploma with an employment honors seal like we did years ago? But we,
Well, remember, they changed all the diploma seals with the new incoming freshman class. So there is an employment seal and then an employment honors seal. We had previously had the academic, or the technical honors diploma.
so the answer to my question is yes or no? I'm confused.
So the
I remember
employment
we used to
honors
do that.
seal is new with the new diplomas.
The employment honors seal is new with the.
Yes, beginning with 25, 26. So
Okay.
this year's the incoming freshman class is under the new diploma model, which has the employment honors seal.
Okay, is that what you did several years ago?
Not what this is current.
No, but I mean, did you do the employment honors seal before? When that gentleman came up from Indianapolis? And the gal was here from Legacy?
No.
No, okay, something different, I'm sorry.
No, thank you.
Okay, this is much broader as I'm reading this now.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, 2623, student assessment. Student test scores on statewide assessments may be utilized in making placement decisions. However, a student score on a statewide assessment may not be the primary factor or measure used to determine whether a student is eligible for a particular course or program. So somewhere from Indiana code, it's important that we, as a school, don't use test scores alone on determining whether someone can be placed. However, for IREAD 3, the state believes you can use one assessment to make a determination about retention versus promotion. So I find it interesting that that part exists. In this policy, then, at the beginning of page 2, it talks about a student in grade 2 is at risk of not being reading proficient shall be offered summer school, which of course we've done. We also have intentional programs during the school year for any second grader who didn't, any third grader who didn't pass as a second grader. As you know, we had an intensive program that kicked up prior to the May administration of the test for third graders. And then we also had a 2-week summer school for kids who still needed to get through the hoop. And those kids who came to summer school did all effectively pass the test. So I won't steal Yolanda's thunder on that, but it's coming, the news that we did. As much as I fretted over it last winter, and I still, as you can tell from me commenting on the discrepancy in the code, I don't think we should be retaining students. I do think if they're way off, there's an argument to be made to bring up their skills. But students who in second grade show improvement to third grade and they're tracking, and a good statistician would be able to tell you that, yes, they'll likely pass as a fourth grader, then why make them repeat third grade? And I'll say it again in case anybody's listening. I mean, our state, when they passed this law in '24, they loved talking about the Mississippi Miracle, but they failed to include the part that in Mississippi, the third graders who didn't pass went into a grade 3.5 class, which included fourth grade content in a lot of subject areas, but third grade content in English language arts. And so they were able to then go back to their cohort if in fourth grade, in fact, they were successful. And that's an important piece that we're missing here on this. Anyway, in this policy, at the middle of page 2, it gets into an appeal process for parents whose student's been retained in grade 3. However, the appeal process requires for the principal and/or the superintendent to make a judgment. A to E are the same in the appeal as they are in the process that we use in the first place. So I'm not sure why our policy authors, Neola, are including this, because there's nothing different. So there would be no reason for a principal, the superintendent, and/or the board to say you'd have to be disregarding the exceptions to passing the test. I don't think anybody wants to be put in that position. So I'm suggesting reject that whole part, delete it, and just stick with the part that talks about retention. And if we get challenged on it, we're going to say what we've been saying. We don't agree with it, but it's in code.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where we are on student assessment and third grade retention. This next one is 2700, the annual performance report. What they told us is not going to be published any longer. So I included it in there so you would know, but this policy is getting rescinded for everybody.
It's getting what?
It's getting rescinded because it's not going to be required any longer.
Will it be replaced with the gradings
Well,
that they're talking about doing?
They're coming up with a new grading system, but since they have the DOE websites that show all of
Yeah.
the school performance, there isn't a need for that
Right.
anymore to be published.
the dashboards, if you will, are
Yes.
readily available for people to monitor the progress of different metrics for every school and every school corporation. So that's separate reports no longer necessary.
So those will still be out there, but it'll be on the DOE website or?
Yes, but they are reconfiguring how they determine those grades now that they're bringing them back, so that'll be interesting.
Do you have any ideas on how that might look?
They did put out a proposal, so I can send that your way.
Oh, okay, that'd be nice. Thank you.
3142, cancellation of a teacher contract. I'm going to check my time. Cancellation of a teacher contract. They're using some terminology that may be phased out moving forward. On our individual Lake Central evaluation program, though, we're still going to stick with the effective terminology. So it's okay for now, but this policy could be coming back your way somewhere in the future. Even though they just updated this in April, it's probably going to change again based on some other things. As you know, we terminate teachers' contracts generally for very few reasons, but usually because they're ineffective and/or doing something that is against our values in terms of communication or something with students. So I expect that this will get updated again soon, and we'll see if it's more detailed or makes more sense. 3216, again, staff dress and appearance. This is no different than the last more general policy. This one, of course, because it's in the 3,000s, it has to do with certified staff. Same 5 choices. Again, I suspect unless it's a health or safety hazard, as long as it's appropriate, it's good. Staff and student relations. This policy, I think, has been updated several times. We always choose on page 2, just about everything they say could be a boundary invasion of a student, inappropriate behavior towards students, inappropriate conversation with students, or communication with students. And so it seems to be a problem in America. Knock on wood, not a huge problem for Lake Central so far. However, it's important that we have this policy in place so that should anybody step out of line, we've got pretty clear defense for, and honestly, for most of the things, the stories in the news at least, you probably wouldn't need a policy to terminate because you'd have other good and just cause. But this policy does, A through U, give specific examples, I suspect, that have happened somewhere in America, or at least in the states that Neola covers. So we embrace that policy. Determination of legal settlement. This one gets a little bit tricky because there are times where we have cases such as people who don't live here yet, who have a contract to have their home built, and we will allow them to enroll their kids with that contract. And we have cases where people relocate during a grading period. We allow them to finish the grading period at the high school, the semester. Of course, you know, at the high school, there's an Indiana code that says if you finish your junior year, you could go senior year, as long as you live in Indiana, if you live outside of St. John Township. And there are some times where, given certain circumstances, we allow even middle school kids to finish the semester instead of just a 9-week grading period. Generally speaking, they have to provide their own transportation when we make that exception. K, I wanted to point out that out-of-state students whose parents do not have legal settlement within the corporation, but who present evidence that they will move into the corporation with a short period of time, may enroll in the school as tuition students for the time not in residence. I didn't check that because there are no tuition students. So again, this goes back to if somebody from across the border said, here's our contract and our home is showing that it's going to be done during the current term, we likely would accept them. If it says our home will be done in April, and then we would likely say no. Because then it would make sense for them to finish that school year back where they are and enroll with us the next year. So the policy needs to be in a short period of time. And we all know from housing construction that generally speaking, things don't go as quickly as planned.
So Dr. Veracco, a lot of corporations around us are allowing transfer students, right? I've heard that.
Some are, yes.
Okay, all right, okay. And we are not.
No, and you probably know that there are certain parts of the state where they've been stealing each other's kids or recruiting each other's students for years.
For years, yeah.
Mishawaka's a prime
gonna say South Bend, yeah.
area for that. But we've always felt that when we go to our community and ask them to build a really nice school and ask them to give additional support to our operations, our teacher salaries and such, that it should be, the schools should be for those very people who are providing that support to our students. Some people, because of declining enrollment, have chosen to do it anyway, and they do get extra tuition support from the state, but I think they've probably made it more difficult to ever be able to go back to their community with that type of a program. So
So,
that's sort of where we've always been. Now, until the last few years, we haven't been a declining student district either. So who's to say at some point, there could be a change in philosophy, but for now, I don't see it.
yeah. What was I going to ask you? Well, the new athletic rule, how does that apply? In other words.
Well, it doesn't apply because we're not open, so.
It doesn't work.
Again, the idea that the General Assembly put tremendous pressure on the IHSAA to pass that bylaw, I found interesting because I don't know why the IHSAA just didn't say, well, you passed the rule and then you can own it.
And you deal with it now.
Because I just got the feeling throughout the whole process that the commissioners at the IHSA didn't really believe in the policy, that they didn't want students, freshmen through junior year, transferring around. But members of the General Assembly believe that's, should be their right. And so, yes, some schools that are open are going to get athletic transfers in greater abundance than those of us who are not.
Okay, right. Now, and I see that some of the area corporations are doing online charter schools, and that's to increase their number of students, right? Like
Yes,
Chesterton is doing it, and.
they've had it for a while. Portage is starting.
Yes. Do you have thoughts about that? I mean, is that something that we should consider, or no?
Well, I think we have a really good professional staff, and I think that the education we provided when we did online learning was not close to what our students get in person. And I recognize that in-person learning isn't for everybody. It's too long of a day. That's where I feel that we can be a little more flexible with students and their schedules, which I think our counseling department does a good job of at high school. So then the question is, okay, what about the middle school kids who feel like they can't do 6.5 hours or 7 hours of instruction a day? I don't know. Those are such foundational skills that are so important to be able to learn the high school content. I personally feel like we would be doing a disservice to have students getting the basic standards in middle school, knowing the challenges of high school. But again, I'm just one person, and I haven't pushed for it. I've never really believed it's anywhere nearly as good as in person, because I do think a lot of people will tell you from their experience that certain teachers made them work harder. And that's because they had a relationship and they knew the people and they got to see them in action, not just being helped directly, but seeing that staff member help other peers, made those students work harder and, inspired them to take the next level of the same course content. So I don't know. There are a lot of people who think it's easier and cheaper, but I just don't think it's better.
What do you think about it, Mrs. Castaneda? What's your philosophy?
I mean, I think we saw, as Dr. Vargo said, that the online learning experience wasn't the same as the in-person learning experience. But I also know traditional school isn't for all students.
Right.
I think the challenge is staffing it, because especially at the secondary level where there's such a variety of classes being taken, carving out that time is challenging. And clearly, some school districts have found a way to pull it off, like Chesterton. But I do think that in-person experience is valuable.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have one left then, the 5111 determination of legal residence, or did I already hit that? Again, we work with people in terms of if they're going to be leaving the district to make for a smooth transition for students. We allow people to transition in, as I said before. If they're going to be establishing residence in St. John Township in a short period of time. We didn't choose K because we don't have tuition. So I don't think we've had complaints about our approach to families who either are moving into the St. John Township territory or moving out. I think we've been fair with all of those folks, and when they finally move, they establish residency that's fixed and permanent. They then enroll in wherever they move to. So that's our first chunk for tonight. There's another set of this for our next 2-week period, and then we'll get these policies approved and get them uploaded. Any questions about any of this before we pause before the regular meeting?
So we still are allowing transfer students if their parent is employed?
As long as their parent is employed and makes $8,000, which is about, the only time that gets dicey is with a coach
Right.
or a sponsor.
And they don't have to have legal settlement?
Correct.
Okay.
They do have to have settlement in the state of Indiana.
right.
Any of our employees
That's right.
that happen to work in Illinois cannot.
Okay, good point. They cannot be working in Illinois.
Because we would not get the transfer tuition.
Yeah, or they can, okay, I got it. They could not bring their student to work with them if they,
It's because of the transfer tuition. So if there's an employee with a child who lives outside of Lake Central but in Indiana, we get the transfer tuition money from their
Right.
home district.
Right.
But if they live in Illinois, there's
Right.
no system set up for us to get any sort of transfer tuition from the
Got it.
state of Illinois.
okay. Thank you.
No, I just,
This was in my packet.
Did that get tabled?
Well, this all is just.
Okay, Jeremy, I think that's going to conclude the work session for